Thank you so much for joining us all at Meet the Speakers. Today's theme is diversity, inclusion and equality, all subjects that are very much at the forefront in the news and should be always. The Speakers Agency, for those of you who don't know it, has been running since 2001, and we supply speakers, event hosts, facilitators, conference moderators, etc., to companies across the world. So we're a global company and our clients are global too. And today's particular subject is very close to my heart. I have not suffered from racism in any major form, but as a child growing up in the 60s and early 70s and having a mum from Naples, I was called names on a regular basis, such as Spick and Dago, even though I was extremely white. It didn't seem to bother them. And also anybody who ever called at my mum and dad's house, when my mum opened the door, they always assumed she was the cleaner, not the lady of the house. Another topic today, LGBT, is very close to my heart because my stepdaughter, Kirsty, is gay. And thirdly, disability is very strongly associated with our family, and that is because my gorgeous granddaughter Olivia, who is there today with her mummy and her daddy, you can see her there, she has cerebral palsy and she also has autism. That said, she is a spectacular young 13-year-old, a proper little madam, bright as a button, and I'm so glad that she's going to be hearing us all speak today. So welcome everybody, and may I hand you over to Katie King, who's our host for today. Thank you,
Thanks.
Katie.
Thank you, Sylvia. So I think you're going to be, for those of you that are new, we can see some familiar faces as well. I think you'll find this to be a refreshingly honest webinar. We'll be talking for about an hour. We've got 4 speakers today who'll spend about 7, maximum 10 minutes, not pitching to you, not actually giving you their talk if you book them as a speaker, but giving you a flavour of who they are, of their stories, which is so important. So we're going to be hearing from them very shortly. But as Sylvia says, you know, I've certainly growing up in Tottenham in North London. Racism was a major problem. I've experienced, being 53, certainly ageism and sexism, you know, working in a very male industry for about 30 years. So been on the receiving end of all aspects of that, but the experts are here today and they've got some fantastic stories. So we're going to start with Catrin Pugh, who's a really remarkable and courageous woman. Catrin's one of the only adults in the world to have survived 96% burns after she was in a horrific coach crash in the French Alps in April of 2013. Really inspirational, and also another example, we'll be hearing from another one later on in the webinar, but an example of somebody who won't let their disabilities define them. So over to you, Catrin, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be joining everyone today. You've got such a great lineup today of speakers, and so I'm glad to kick it off. So yes, my name is Catrin. I am a burn survivor, and if you'd have asked me about that years ago, I don't know what I would have known about a burn survivor, what they've been through, and how, you know, motivating and inspiring they can be. But I hope that I've now become that person for others. Now, as you know, speakers, we're storytellers, so I love to tell my story to people. To do it in 7 minutes is certainly a feat, so I'm just going to be giving you more of a brief overview of what I've been through, how I've got to where I am today, and a little bit about my experience with equality, diversity. I've now become a campaigner and things, so it's something that's very close to my heart. So when I was 19 years old, I was living up in the mountains in France. I had been working a ski season, and it was on our very last day. I'd done 5 months up in the mountains, and our coach that we were traveling on was coming down the mountainside when our brakes failed. Now, we were traveling on a hill towards a cliff face, and it crashed and instantly exploded. Now, unfortunately, I always say I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as soon as the explosion happened, I was engulfed in flames. Now, my boyfriend at the time had managed to get off the coach with everybody else, and he decided to come back on to look for me. And at that point, I was completely alight, lying in the aisle. He heroically grabbed me. He was the one that got me off and stamped me out. And he and some of my friends stayed with me for 2 hours on the roadside. And it was during that time that I realized just how different my life was going to be if I survived it. I remember lying there and thinking the chances of me coming through this are very slim, and I wouldn't go to sleep because I didn't think I'd ever wake up again. Now, obviously, it's a good news story because I am here today. But yeah, so I was flown to a hospital. I was told, my parents were told I had a 1 in 1,000 chance of surviving this. Now, somehow I was that 1 in 1,000. And I just kept getting a bit better. I spent 3 months in a coma. And throughout that time, I was fighting for my life. When I woke up, I was still fighting, but it was getting better. And I spent 5 further months in hospital, not knowing how I could ever have a happy life after what had happened. I was immobile in bed. I couldn't do anything for myself. I was and would always be scarred and looking different. And as a 19-year-old woman, knowing just how much the way we look is how people judge you, it was certainly daunting thinking about how I could ever live a life of happiness and fulfillment again. Now, that all started to change as I got a bit better. My physical abilities started to get better over sort of a 5-year period. Things improved, and I started realizing when I was looking around me that people were judging me and assuming that my life would never be happy. And I know I thought that, but I saw other people with disabilities having an amazing life and being supported and getting married and getting jobs they wanted. And so I remember sitting there thinking, I want that too. So maybe I need to start thinking about how I can do it. So I started trying to make a change. I came out of hospital and I would put a smile on my face every single day, even though I would be feeling awful inside. And slowly, through hard work, through looking at others, through the support I had, the smile kind of started to become a permanent fixture. I started to see that the disabilities I had, well, I don't call them disabilities, I call them different abilities, were actually powerful, and they were something that could help me rather than hinder me. So I started thinking about what I wanted from my life. So I decided I wanted to use my positivity, which I was lucky enough to have after all of this, to help other people. I decided I wanted to do something in healthcare eventually. So I'm now studying physiotherapy, and hoping to work in burns in the future to not only inspire through talking like this, but to inspire by actually doing a career after going through all of that people at the start of my course actually told me I would never be able to do. They weren't going to let me begin the course because they said they'd never had anyone like me do it before, so they couldn't guarantee I'd finish. And my response to that was, well, if you've never had anyone do it before, then surely that means you don't know if I can finish, so you should let me try. And I'm in my 2nd year now, just finished, and I'm definitely going to get to the end. So I've got a habit of trying to prove people wrong, which has worked well so far. But yeah, so I started doing that, and then I started campaigning. I saw all of these injustices against people that looked different, in air quotes, because I mean everyone in the world looks different, but specifically people that had visible differences, whether that was birthmarks, whether that was scarring, whether that was congenital issues or any kind of disabilities. I used to get stared at in the street. I would get comments saying, like, why have you come out with your arms on show? I'd walk into a bar and meet my friends, and I would get awful things said to me. And I realized that I wanted to try and change this. I realized I wasn't able to change what had happened to me. I wasn't able to change, the scars I had, but I could change my own thoughts about them and potentially change the world around me's thoughts about them. So that's what I started to do. So I started speaking, giving talks at different events, trying to change people's minds and perceptions of what a scar means. Scars tell your story. Scars explain just how much of a battle you've been through. And they are a map of that all over your skin. So that's the way I see them. And also trying to change people's perceptions by getting involved in charity work, campaigning, doing interviews, and really challenging those perceptions that people have. So I've had the luxury and the joy of getting to be involved with loads of charities that team up with particularly fashion and beauty brands actually recently, because there is such a lack of diversity there. It's starting to change, but there was such a lack. We started saying some people with scars need to be represented. When I look through a magazine or I look through a brochure, I want to see someone like me that inspires me to want to buy your products and work with you and buy your clothes. So I've had the luxury of walking in London Fashion Week with a designer, and I've had the joy of myself and 12 other ladies being involved in photography books with Rankin, who photographed us, which was an amazing experience. And it really actually, again, highlighted just how beautiful these so-called imperfections can be. I also recently got to be a part of Avon's new makeup line and get to be the face of that. And it was just, when I was in hospital lying in bed and looking through magazines and not seeing anyone with any kind of, I always use air quotes, imperfections that made me feel like I belonged in society, it was awful. So if I can give something like that back just by standing in front of the camera, giving back that confidence to people, giving people tips and ideas about how to stay motivated and determined when people are against you, that's why I do what I do today, and that's why I love to share my story. So yeah, hopefully the rest of these speakers will continue to inspire you today. But I absolutely love sharing it. I love fighting for equality for people from all areas and walks of life, whether it's a disability, race, ethnicity, or gender, anything like that. I'm very happy to stand up and speak on their behalf, because I've noticed how much of a change can be made in as little as sort of 5 years. So if we can continue going with it, it will make a real difference. So yeah, thank you very much. And I'm going to pass you back.
Well done, Catrin. Yeah, big round of applause for you there. Thank you so much. That was I found that extremely inspiring. And as you say, now feels like there's a real tide of change for us all. So fantastic. And I love your quote of different abilities as well. That's fantastic. And that's what we need to do in the work we're doing, through all of us, you know, to change those perceptions in our communities, through social media as well. I think there's a real movement towards that right now. So thank you for that, Catrin. Next up, we have Trisha Stewart. For those of you that have been on a number of these in the past weeks, we've had Trisha as a guest lots of times, but now it's her time to be in the spotlight directly. So Trisha's the creator of the Women's Institute Alternative Calendar, which took the world by storm. It's now 21 years ago, believe it or not, the first charity nude calendar, which subsequently raised over £4 million for Blood Cancer UK. And Tricia's actually been portrayed by Dame Helen Mirren in the film Calendar Girls, which I'm sure most of you have seen. You won't believe this, but she's 71 years old, and she is the perfect example of an older woman who's not going to let age stop her from doing all kinds of pursuits: wild water swimming, learning women's self-defense, as she told us on Tuesday, but also teaching Pilates and speaking all over the world. So really excited to have Tricia Stewart speak next. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. That was brilliant, Catrin. You're very inspirational. I only took my clothes off. That's all I did. Age has never mattered to me. It's never been a thing with me. Health and fitness, I think, is really important. But whatever age I've been has never mattered. And the idea that somehow a nude calendar featuring middle-aged women would cause such a stir was quite a shock to me. You know, it was the humour behind it. It was the WI, it was the image, but I didn't think that actually people would think, and that these women were too old, which was, some people did think that. Not lots of people, fortunately, and that was why it was a huge success. I was 50 when the calendar was launched. Miss January was 65. So, you know, it doesn't matter. She's 85 now and she'd still do a calendar if we needed her to. I had the best role model growing up because my mum was 46 when she had me and my twin brother. She had 3 other children, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And she never seemed any older than anybody else's mum, even though she was probably the same age as their grandmas. So she was a brilliant role model. And the first age, I was 10 when I found out that she was 56 then, and I'd never even thought about it before. So she was the best role model anybody could, full of energy, interested in us all, and never seemed any different age. I joined the WI in 1984 when I moved to the village of Cracow in the Yorkshire Dales. Angela said if I didn't join, they'd think I was funny in the village. So I joined to stop people thinking that I was funny. And met some brilliant women, because I hadn't realised before that WI had done so much. WI followed the suffragettes in the movement for women's rights, for the vote for women, and they did all, and it is still the backbone of the country. It's brilliant women. It's not a load of old women making jam, and I think this is what the calendar showed everybody. The motto is enlightenment, fun and friendship, and believe me, I think it is that. The WI have actually organised WI groups in women's prisons. And I went to Her Majesty's Prison Send and Her Majesty's Prison Bronzefield. They have a WI meeting every month and they have speakers. And it was incredible. It wasn't like being in a prison with prisoners. It was like being at a WI meeting. And they're giving those women one day a month a view of the outside world, really, of a normal life that they could have when they do come out of prison. Every year with WI, there is a traditional calendar, and this is how ours came about. It usually features pictures of hills and letterboxes and sheep, and sometimes a snowy scene. And every year we asked if we have a photograph to submit. And this particular year, which was a long time before John was ill, I just turned to Andrew and said, we can do an alternative WI calendar, feature the crafts of WI, but in the nude. And she said, as if. And it was a joke. And it was only when John was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in February 1998 that the idea came back, and we told him about it. He thought it was very funny, but he said we'd never do it. But when he died after only 5 months, I was determined to do it in his memory and raise money for the charity Blood Cancer UK. And so, as Katie said, since then we have had a movie. Aunt Helen Mirren cut her teeth on me and went on to play the Queen. And you say. And then, of course, the stage play, which ran for 3 years and went all over the world and made $1 million for the charity. And the amateur dramatic portrayal of it is still going on all over the world. And they thank us all the time because we have given roles to older women, which doesn't often happen. The stage play actresses thank us all the time, the movie actresses, and all the women that are portraying us all over the world. And realizing that it isn't about age and it isn't about nudity, it is about the reasons behind it, the humor behind it, and the inspiration it seems to give people. So it isn't just about being nude, really. There's a musical too. It's been written by Tim Firth, who wrote the movie and the stage play. Him and Gary Barlow have been friends for years and always felt the story should be a musical. So it ran in the north, then in London, and then it toured a year ago for a year. And before COVID spoilt everything, it was on its way to America. But I'm sure it will go to America and it will continue with its magic because it does seem to have a mind of its own. In 2001, I had the good luck to go to the opening of Sylvia's Women Speakers agency, and she found me, and I found a whole new career. Before this, I then give the vote of thanks at WI. I used to get palpitations. When we had to read in assembly when I was 14, my mum used to let me stop off because my legs used to shake when I went up to read a piece out of the Bible. So things have changed, and not just with age, but I don't really think of it. At 55, I did the Great North Run to promote the movie. At 60 and 62, I did a moonwalk in London and then a moonwalk in Scotland. When I was 65, I discovered open water swimming. And for my 66th birthday, I got a wetsuit, and it was such a thrill to have a wetsuit. Because years ago, when I was younger, when we were first married, we did have a speedboat and we used to water ski. But since then, I've never had my own wetsuit. So it was such a thrill. And then 70, I'm 71 now. COVID has put in a bit of a break on this that I want to do next. There is a course called Women Empowered, and it's jiu-jitsu based, and it's to teach women and girls to defend themselves. Not to fight, but to be safe, to not get beaten up, not get attacked, not get assaulted, not get raped, not get killed, but to get out of the situation safely. And it's a fantastic course, and I love it. And it's in California, which is a bit of a stretch at the moment. But I am just carrying on learning it. It's online. It's Gracie University, and they are so inspiring. How they talk about girls and women defending themselves and how important it is. And it's two brothers, and it was their father who did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and realized that 1 in 4 women were attacked in their lifetimes. And there was nothing out there to teach women how to protect themselves. So my next aim, and then I can travel around with Sylvia and talk about it to everybody else, is to get my pink belt. They call it the pink belt. And that is my dream, to get my pink belt and then to teach. Probably when I turn up at schools and that, they'll probably think I'm the cleaner, and they won't imagine that I've come to teach them jiu-jitsu. But I'll just have to get over. If I go in my judo suit, my pink belt, they might just think it's So we have raised over 6 million now for the charity, and apparently we've altered the image of the WI forever. There are lots of younger women join the WI now. They don't have their meetings in a village hall. They don't do crafts like we used to do, like 3 decorated hard-boiled eggs in a basket. They don't have to do that now. They can. But it's the philosophy behind it, the ethos of the traditions and the friendship and women helping each other that needs to stay. And it needs to stay as the backbone of the country, because that's what WI is. So long may it go on, and hopefully maybe next year I'll see you in person in my judo suit with my pink belt on. Thank you very much.
Round of applause for Trisha. I'm very inspired by that. That's amazing, Tricia. Thank you so much. I turned 53 years ago and really struggled with that. And having daughters now of 21 and 24 who feel like, your younger self, sometimes it's a real struggle. And I know a lot of my cohort, women, menopause and so on, can be a real issue. So it's so refreshing to feel your energy and your positivity and your zest for life, and not letting anything define you and no barriers coming your way. So I think that's really inspirational. Thank you so much. Just to remind everybody, we've got 2 more speakers. After the next 2 speakers, we will go into breakout rooms, and at that point you'll have the opportunity to come off of mute, to ask questions. You'll be able to speak to all 4 of the speakers, as well as myself and Sylvia. So next up we have Nick Eade. Nick is a popular culture and charity expert, but also a campaigner and a major supporter of LGBTQ+ community. He supported charities like ARK, Stonewall, Kick It Out, and also Rainbow Railroad. Opinionated views, which we're going to hear shortly, but a very fair outlook on all aspects of campaigning. A strong voice is what Nick brings basically to everything he's passionate about. So that's what he's going to share with us now. So over to you, Nick.
Oh, thank you so much, and hello to everybody. And I'm definitely going to put on my wish list a a wetsuit for when I'm 70, 72 or 73 will do, whenever. I can't wait to get one. Lovely to meet you all, and thank you so much. I can talk about my story loads, but I'll sort of give you a little bit of a précis. I have always been a very passionate person, but when I was at school, I was kind of bullied a lot, bullied because everybody thought that I could be gay. And I found it very difficult to really sort of be myself. I went to a boarding school and everybody was playing rugby, and I was kind of wanting to just be in the drama group or paint. And I used to find myself being very frustrated by the fact that people who were academic or were sort of, prefect or in the rugby suddenly got the lead parts in musicals when I was the one that actually wanted to be in the musical. And so that always frustrated me. And it got to a stage where I actually really couldn't talk about potentially whether I was gay, and my parents were quite a lot older. I was fostered and my brother was adopted. So there was lots of things going on in my youth that I just didn't feel I could ever really talk about stuff. And so I went to art college and then to drama school, and drama school obviously is a place where everybody can be free, but even there I didn't really feel right. So after that, in 1997, I was with my parents in Brighton, and it was the day that Princess Diana died. And my mum and I were talking about it, and then my mum unfortunately died in front of me from a stroke. We were just chatting, so it was a very, very difficult thing to see. And the one thing about this sort of weird relationship between Princess Diana and the boys and I is that weirdly, the world was sad. Every single person, everywhere we looked, on television, in the newspapers, it was all about grief. So I had this terribly, terribly long grieving process, which took me out of London, where I started my life, to go back home to Scotland. My father really didn't want to talk to me because I reminded him too much of my mother. So it was, and in 20 years ago, in those days, my dad had never cooked ever. He was very sort of reliant on my mum, and we were reliant on my mum. So we had to really create a whole new relationship. So it was very difficult, and I had a nervous breakdown. And then one day I decided to come back to London, and I was so angry as well that I hadn't been able to come out to my mum. And it really affected me as well. So I told my father, and he was like, "We don't mind, and we knew, so don't worry." And that whole relief came off so quickly. And I think that's one of the things I'm very passionate about. People still to this day have lots of problems thinking that their parents are going to have an issue. But parents have grown up with their children. They see them every day. They know exactly what's going on. And I think it's just to try and help people change that, switch something in their heads to say, look, this is what's going on with me. I'm in love with somebody of the same sex. And that's it. For me, homosexuality is just who you love, pure and simple. That's it. But from there, I was very angry about stroke. I had no idea what it was. So I basically decided that I wanted to change and educate young people what stroke was. So I'm not the kind of person to do a fun run or dress up as a banana and do the marathon, but I am somebody who loves a party. So I put on a big party, and I basically, honestly, I went and door-stopped Jamie Oliver, who I'd read his father had had a stroke. And I said, "You have to come to my party." And I waited outside his house until him and his wife had come out. I mean, now I'll be arrested, but those days it was kind of a bit crazy. And I wrote to OK Magazine, and in those days it was faxes, and I've still got the fax where they said, "If you do a party, we'll cover it for you." And so this was my sort of way in, and I put on this big event, and Jamie Oliver came, and all the cast of EastEnders, and it became like a big thing. So I did that for, 18 years. It was called A Night with Nick, and everybody from Kylie, Robbie Williams, Kelly Osbourne, Sharon Osbourne, all came to it. And then when I was 30, I know I look pretty good, but I'm old. When I was 30, I was working just in a brand called consultancy, and I just sat. I was in the loo, and I was like, I need to be on television. I need to have a voice. And I was so frustrated that every year I try and fundraise, and all I wanted to be was Robbie Williams, so that somebody would say yes, because everybody was saying no to me. So I gave up my job, and I became a runner at a TV company called Shine, which was owned by Elizabeth Murdoch. And I basically was making tea for people for 6 months. And I suddenly thought to myself, what am I doing? And then just before Christmas, they said to me, "Look, we need to get rid of you. your 6 months is up, that's it. And I sat there and I phoned my father up and said, I've made the biggest mistake of my life. And then about an hour later, I got there was a cheer in the office, and basically they had a show called the Russell Grant Show. He's the astrologer. His show was commissioned on Sky, a daytime chat show. And Liz Murdoch turned around to me and said, we want you to be his co-host. So I went from being the tea boy to suddenly having a job every day on national television. And I learnt everything. And then from there, I got onto Lorraine Kelly. I was on there for 4 years. I became the head judge of Project Runway. And I realized suddenly I had a voice, and that voice I wanted to put into good things. So with stroke, more people, would talk about that. And then I set up a business, and my business now today raises money and awareness for charities all around the world. We do everything from BBC Children in Need, Tech Santa, Genes for Genes, as we said, ARC, Rainbow Railroad, Mothers to Mothers. And we, collectively have raised around about 20 million for good causes. And I am the person that knows how to do it because I started it from scratch. And I'm so passionate about making a change that I will actively go to charities that I see need help, and I will give them my advice, and I'll see what I can do. And like you were saying before, Catrin, about fashion, a lot of the stuff I do is using fashion, because fashion is such a great way of educating and being a conduit to showing support, but also actually creating questions. So with stroke awareness, I created Style for Stroke, which is now a proper charity, but we created a thing called Famous Last Words. Because when you have a stroke, you get a thing called aphasia, where you actually can't articulate. So our idea was actually, if you're famous, what would your last words be? And that creates conversation. And we partnered with a fast fashion brand called Boohoo, which is very young, got influencers wearing it. And suddenly young people were talking about stroke, and they were actually saying, oh, my grandmother had one. And then suddenly young people started saying they had them. So people like Jessie J had one. And as we know, Sharon Stone had one. And Luke Perry, who passed away from 90210, he had one last year. So since then, as you can see, I'm very passionate. I always try and make a difference. And I always come up with things. And I think what you were talking about before with regards to COVID, which is very interesting, especially in the charity world and in any kind of campaign. This is, at the moment, we're in LGBTQ month, awareness month. Normally there'd be pride marches going on and stuff like that, but there's still need for money. There's still need for raising awareness as well. And during this time, a lot of money has gone towards NHS charities, which is fine. But these small charities out there that desperately need people's money, they're not getting it because everyone's kind of thought they need to support the NHS. So there's going to be a huge issue further on, and whether it's charities like Variety, which are all about children and going to therapy rooms and light therapy, they can't do that now. So we work with them on hopefully sending stuff to disabled children to give them advantage. Things like food banks, etc. It's so important. Some kids, their only meal a day is going to school. So how do we support them? And obviously one of the biggest ones, and it is actually for LGBTQ plus over 50s. They're very, very isolated, and there's a lot of people who are suffering at the moment. And so hopefully people are setting up phone lines where they can speak to people and befriend people. So you can see I'm passionate. I love what I do. I learned the hard way, but my mum always said to me, to thine own self be true. And to me, a spade's a spade, and I'll just get on with it and do the digging and make sure that I have foundations I've built and build something fabulous for charities, for myself, and for anybody that I meet. So thank you.
Wow, well done, Nick.
Thanks.
Big round of applause. I love that, as you say, that T-boy to where you are today, and that tenacity and that bravery. I think that's absolutely amazing. I think it's really humbling. Week on week, we sit here and we listen to some really incredible speakers, like people like Nick, and that are raising money for these incredible causes. So well done to you all for such incredible work. We've got one more speaker, very special speaker. I've heard him speak before. He's absolutely fantastic. So next up we have Ben McBean, who's a veteran Royal Marine, really inspiring with his story. He has recently spoken out in the media about his support for both the Churchill statue, but also his personal experiences of racism. Last week on GMB, he was with Piers Morgan, Piers Morgan actually said very rarely, this is somebody I could listen to all day long. You don't hear a comment like that from somebody like Piers very often. So going to hand over to Ben now to tell, so he can tell us his story. Thanks, Ben.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so it's great to everyone speak, by the way. My personal story, I was a Royal Marines commando, and I was injured in Afghanistan. My right leg was blown off, and my left arm was in a bad state, so that ended up getting like chopped off. But yeah, I left school. I knew I wanted to be a Marine since I was about 14, and when I was probably 16, I kind of started training myself, my press-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, all that kind of stuff, mentally, physically getting ready for it. And I joined when I was about 18, I think. There was 60 or 70 of us who started, only 11 originals got through. So yeah, got into the Royal Marines, I was buzzing, no worries at all. Got based in Taunton, 40 Commando with my friends who I passed out of training with, so that was ideal. Had a couple of beers, as you do, just being a lad. And yeah, got sent to Afghanistan. I was looking forward to it, to be honest, because there's some people who've been in the Marines for like 20 years and they've never been anywhere or to war. And I kind of, obviously war's not a good thing, but I did join to like fight, I suppose. So yeah, I knew I'd be on the front line. We went out to Afghanistan, and at first it was pretty quiet, kind of boring almost. You could see Taliban, but they're so far away. It didn't make any difference. So yeah, there was no real dramas. One day, I'm not sure, I can't remember if we moved closer or they came closer to us, but we were all just together. And yeah, the fighting just started to happen. It was like really hot like today, but times 10. You're wearing all your kit, maybe 30, 40 pounds worth of kit, running around with obviously big, massive weapons and things, a little bit of water, pure ammunition, barely any food, and you're fighting for like 8-9 hours at a time sometimes. And yeah, like at first it was just almost exciting, and then it kind of got a bit scary when someone actually gets shot rather than it goes over the head kind of thing. And obviously people then get killed and so on, and you see lots of different things from both sides. And I was only like 18, 19 at the time, so I'd gone from just messing around in school to having a beer down the pub, and all of a sudden now it's kind of life and death situations every minute of the day. Even just to go to the toilet, you've got to take your own weapon with you and so on. So yeah, it got a bit like that, and nothing really bad happened to me, but I just at some point woke up and just my mind just said, oh, today you're probably going to get killed or really badly injured. It was my own voice. It wasn't like a crazy voice or anything. I had no dream. It was just, I don't know, my own voice just said, today there's something that's going to happen. But what can you do? I didn't know. So I just went out there anyway. Went on this patrol. Everything wasn't right. My helmet didn't even fit right this day. My same weapon and Bergen that I carried was the same weight, but it felt heavier. So already I was just like, something's just not right. But I can't say, can I stay back, please? So you just have to go with it. So I went with it. And a couple of hours later, me and my friends, there was a guy in front of me called Stuart, and there was me, a guy behind me called Mark. We were running towards a compound just to clear it. And if there's anyone in there, we'll see what happens. And probably like 10, 15 meters back, there was just a thud. So like a lot of people say, oh, loud bangs. I didn't hear a loud bang. Like, it's just like a thud. It didn't even make my ears pop really. But by the time I woke up on the floor, my right leg was gone. So all I had was like my whole shin bone sticking out with no foot on the end. My left arm was kind of twisted the wrong way. It's kind of hanging off a bit. Just lots of other injuries. My knee was hanging off. And yeah, I'd just gone from like hero to zero in a split second. I was, like young, fit, strong, healthy. I actually wanted to join the SBS in the future. That was my goal. And just in literally a second, just game over. So at one point, I think I was in that much pain, and I couldn't see, like, there was dust everywhere. There was like flies all over me because all the blood everywhere. And I had no energy to like swipe them away. And when I was trying to do it, I noticed I had a big hole in my forearm as well. And I was like, you know what, it's probably easier if I just died. So I remember just like trying to just die. I just was lying there just waiting to bleed out. But as I was getting closer to death, I think it is actually quite scary, I suppose. So at the last minute, I thought, actually, I don't think I would have died. So I tried to like live. So I just tried to like sort myself out. I twisted my arm back around. And as I twisted it back, it was just like, it was all mushy. So like, I'm not sure if all the bones were just shattered or what, but mine was just like mush. So I just kind of tried to pin it to my side and then just started crawling with this arm, and I'd shake out the dirt in the hole in my forearm. And I kind of got to safety. We got rescued. And yeah, I woke up they put me to sleep in Afghanistan, Camp Bastion, the hospital there. I then woke up in Selly Hospital. I knew my leg was obviously gone, but they chopped my arm off. And I was just in intensive care, just bandages everywhere, machines everywhere. I think I woke up to a priest saying a prayer to me. And I remember just saying thank you, and he was like, he ran out the room or something, and I fell asleep again. And then, yeah, just over time, over the next like week and a half or so, I went from wanting to literally jump out of a window because of the pain. I didn't know how my future was going to be, to just, life wasn't actually that bad, because obviously where I was, you could see people a lot worse off. So yeah, I just kind of started to try and think a bit more normal, put my feelings to one side for a second and just think about what I actually want in life. And yeah, I want to live, I want to do stuff. So I turned the TV on, and the first thing I saw was the London Marathon. So I just thought, I'll run that next year. Well, that was the thought process. I just thought I'll just do that next year. So yeah, I went to Headley Court. They gave me a walking leg pretty much straight away. I was given an arm. People asked for an arm. They told me to come back in like 2 or 3 weeks. So I came back and I went to my room to open this arm because I just wanted to try and fit in, if you know what I mean. And when I opened it, they gave me like a white arm. So I had to like wear this black leather glove on it and then wear like a long sleeve top for about a year. And then eventually they were like, oh yeah, you know, I just didn't think, yeah, sorry mate. So then they literally dunked this white arm into like brown paint. So the whole thing was just almost like black. And then eventually I went to like a private place, Dorset Orthopedics, and they actually like build you an arm that looks similar to what I got. I don't always wear it. So yeah, I had my arm, had my leg, then I was given a running leg. A couple of weeks later, I ran down a grass bank, and that was my training really. They just said you either start the marathon with no skin if you train, or start the marathon with skin and finish with no skin. So I started with skin, and I ran the marathon and finished with no skin. So all my skin graft came off. So it was probably not the best move, but at the same time, it just showed, you know, when you put your feelings to one side, sometimes it does actually help, because I think sometimes your feelings hold you back because you always think, oh, I don't know, but actually, you know, you're probably a lot stronger than what you think. So yeah, I ran the marathon a year after. I'm not sure if I inspired anyone to run a marathon or whatever, but I was just hoping that for myself, it gave me the confidence, and for other people, hopefully, they then realised more so their ability over their disability. And yeah, hopefully people can just kind of push themselves forward. And yeah, I've done the marathon and 3 Peaks Challenge, and I've done the marathon a couple of times actually, and just different bits and bobs. Been to Everest Base Camp in the Himalayas. But yeah, it's not, I suppose it's kind of, as I say, just putting your feelings to one side, because even the other day I was going to go on the moors and do a bit of a yomp, and I looked at this peak in the distance and I thought, oh, I don't know if I can get there, because it was quite high, it was quite slippery, and I had the wrong shoes on as well. And that was what was going to stop me. But when I put it to one side, actually I could get there, and it was hard work, but I got there. And it's just little silly things like that. But obviously, if you then have that mindset integrated into your business and so on, it could make you lots of money, or it could help you achieve lots of things. You could raise a lot of money, there's all sorts of different things. So, you know, just kind of, not all the time, but sometimes it's not about how you feel, it's just about what you want. Referencing the Black Lives Matter movement quickly, my views on that was, you know, I don't think we should just tear down every statue known to man, because it is a part of our history, whether we like it or not. Especially with things like the Churchill statue, because obviously all the people that lost their lives fighting in World War II, and we wouldn't be here if they didn't, you know, get involved in that fight. And thank God, obviously, we won it. But the movement itself, I support the fight against racism, but I don't support the fight against just, you know, protesting where you're just smashing a shop window pointlessly, punching someone in the face and kicking a horse's ass. I don't know. It's just all that kind of stuff's just diverted what we're actually trying to fight for, which is to end racism. And unfortunately, we spent 3 or 4 weeks kicking off, and now everyone's already forgot about it because lockdown's almost over. And that was our opportunity to speak out. I don't think enough people had a voice who actually spoke calmly. Instead, it was just everyone just raging the whole time. So hopefully we can all calm down. And maybe one day, hopefully for my son, his future looks a bit brighter if we manage to all sit down and speak together and try and figure out a way to solve a problem that I suppose we didn't really start ourselves, but it is what it is. So yeah, hope you might enjoy it. That's it. I'll just talk about my injury a bit and kind of your mindset and how to move forward. So thank you.
That's it, he says, really humbly. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. I love that, you know, not about what you feel, it's the mindset, it's about, you know, what you want to go out there and achieve. And, you know, that is hugely inspirational to all of us, whatever age, you know, whatever race, whatever ability. So thank you for sharing your story. So 4 amazing speakers. You're going to get the opportunity now for 2 times 10-minute sessions in 2 breakout rooms to put your questions to them. Not just questions, maybe you want to share a challenge you've got at the moment or a little bit of your story, but in your groups make sure everybody gets the chance to speak. So keep your question and your, you know, what you have to say quite brief if you wouldn't mind, and we'll see you shortly in the first breakout room.